So it's my pleasure to welcome all of you and to welcome Dr. Shailaja Paik. It's a paper on a very, very interesting theme, intimate politics, caste, sexuality and discrimination in popular culture in Western India.
I really want to thank you all for coming here today. In Pune, this is the very famous Bal Gandharva Natya Mandir, which is Bal Gandharva was a very famous artist. We're talking about the early 20th century here, and he used to perform as a woman. Right, this is why he's so very famous. And this theater is named after Bal Gandharva, and the theater was celebrating the birth anniversary of the artist. So during this celebration, there are 3 days where this theater engages in different cultural activities, and one of the activities, very significantly, is the performance of Lavani by artists from all over Maharashtra who are performing for an all-women audience. Absolutely revolutionary and very, very radical. So the audience here, the theater was full. They were all women who are not really supposed to attend these kind of events, who were, participating in these dances. So you see that these artists were performing for women, and women are not there, silent or passive. They are very much involved, and you saw them dancing. So this is how the performance is changing. So, you see a lot of changes that happened in this kind of tamasha and the Lavani performance. Lavani Samradni, that is the Lavani Empress, Surekha Punekar, hailing from Pune, had gained a very high reputation for her art in recent years. Punekar recounted her overlapping and complicated struggles to build her career in tamasha. And she says, and I quote, "My maternal grandparents were in tamasha. My father was a hamal, that is a coolie, at Pune railway station. He continued with his hamali during the daytime and engaged in Bailgaricha tamasha, that is the bullock cart tamasha performance in the nights. Once the bullock cart met with an accident and I got a deep cut on my leg. During those times, there was only Zhada Khalsa, that is the tamasha that was performed, and when these performances were held under a tree. There was no proper stage. Tamasgirs also did not get any income out of the art that you come across these days. I was introduced to the stage when I was only 8 years old. I loved to dance and sing. My father also instructed me to sing well. He did not allow me to sleep, and fatke dyache awaz chadavण्यासाठी, meaning he bashed me to sing with a high pitch. I also stood on a chair and sang in front of the audience." End quote. Thus, Surekhatai took physical beatings from her father in order to help her family earn a living, because she knew there would otherwise be no food at home. Hunger was common, she reported. And I quote, "We went from village to perform. When we got to the village, we first begged for bhakri and kalwan, that is the bread and curry. And then after collecting everything, all the breadcrumbs and all the leftovers, ate together at a chaudi, that is the village common hall, and performed in the nights. After 3 or 4 months, we got home until Diwali and worked at dhunya bhandachi kama, that is washing clothes and utensils. So they worked as maids when they were not performing in the theater. So the cycle is like they move around all the villages in Maharashtra for 6 to 7 months, and the rest of the months are spent, maybe at their so-called homes where they are performing other kind of services to earn their living. We never had food in our home. I remember the days of my poverty. Sometimes we got only black tea, not because it is in fashion, but because they could not afford to buy milk. And hard bread, which is called butter." End quote. In this manner, Surekhatai was afflicted by hunger and poverty during her childhood. Poverty was further compounded by illiteracy. Surekhatai was not sent to school because her migratory lifestyle could not allow this luxury. and she reasoned, and I quote, "My parents were alcoholic. Because my father was Kalecha Nada, that is, engrossed in the art, he did not send me to school. We were 6 siblings. I must say that while my parents sent my sisters to school, who educated until the 3rd grade, I never got such an opportunity. I don't know the reason. My mother says she doesn't know." End quote. Although schooled in the art of tamasha, Surekhatai was denied formal education. She was also dominated by her older sister Lata Punekar and mentioned that only after she abandoned her sister's fard, that is the troupe, she started her own tamasha fard. So I want to also mention that there's a lot of rivalry, there's a lot of competition in this profession. So even sisters and brothers are always competing. Yet her misfortune continued in terms of also finding a trustworthy life partner. She stated, and I quote, "During my tamasha life, I fell in love with Baba Pathan, contractor. Of course, he never took me to his house because I was a tamasha dancer, an object who nobody wants to associate with. He used to lock me in a room at a lodge and visit his family whenever he wanted to. After a few years, I was pregnant and Pathan abandoned me. My family was furious with me over this relationship, and still I continued to dance." End quote. Perhaps Surekhatai, not perhaps, that was a fact, Surekhatai had a live-in relationship with Baba Pathan. Her silence and discomfort were reflecting on her relationship, while her partner suggested that their unstable affair. However, it also seems that Surekhatai did see Pathan on and off. So the other thing that I want to bring out here is that these relationships, these open relationships, were also very much intercaste and interreligious kind of relationships. So Pathan is a Maratha Muslim here, and Surekha Punekar belongs to a Dalit community. So we see these kind of different relationships. Surekhatai's sexual labor of the Lavani, I argue, constituted a kind of body politics. She evoked an erotic performance through her body, making other lewd gestures by using different parts of the body in a sensual manner, or singing lustful or passionate songs like Pikल्या पानाचा देठ किती हिरवा, meaning basically saying that the stem of a mature leaf is very green and very juicy, or singing Ya Rauji, Kashi rakhu mi tumchi maharji, which means, "Come on, O guest, please come. How do I maintain or sustain your desire?" Or there's another song which says, "By me ladachi ga ladachi lay ladachi," which basically means, "I am your dearest one, and I am your dearest." So these are the kind of themes that were very, very flirtatious and sexually motivated in order, of course, to seduce the public, who would then literally throw money at the artists or offer it to them with respect. Tamasha dancers, yet, after all of this, and we understand that they were on the lowest ladder of sexuality and outside the dominant discourses which strengthened the connection between chastity and caste. As the famous feminist Gail Rubin has argued, that discourses, and I quote, of sexual morality are in common with ideologies of racism than with true ethics, because they grant virtue to already dominating groups. Thus, the morality of Dalit women and even other non-Dalit lower caste women was resignified to amplify upper caste morality and caste power. The women were in constant and potential danger of being violated physically, and they faced many other distresses, as Surekhatai recounts, and I quote, "I got an opportunity to perform at Rangabhavan and Nehru Center in Mumbai, and my career took off from there. People talked about my singing and adakari, that is gestures. Tamasha has changed its form over the recent years and has become more lewd and raunchy because the public is not the same as earlier. Today, you find a lot of money and less of the art form, clothes, and adakari are changing immensely. And if this is the state of art today, what will happen to future dances? What will happen to Tamasha and Lavani? I had struggled immensely from 1998 to 2003. I've also acted in many movies. However, all this hard work got to me. इतका व्याप झाला मला, घरचा व्याप, सतत व्याप. I was and am totally stressed. Stress of the home. I've been always stressed. I've developed diabetes. However, I continued my ghode daud, that is this horse race, for 7 years. I used to fall sick, but I worked undeterred. I got my brothers and sisters married. I got my cousins married. Everything is settled now. I have earned up to rupees 80,000 for a show when things were fine. However, I am in debt today, and I have to start afresh. End quote. Surekha reflected on the changing nature of Tamasha and argued that the public performance was becoming more vulgar. She, however, continued that she had done her best to use her talents for the betterment of the community at large. And I quote, I perform Lavani, so the dances that you saw recently. Some of them are very famous, the ones that I just quoted. I engaged in a few song in drama performances. Along with a drum player and harmonium player, I visited villages and performed Darubandi, Hundabandi, that is anti-liquor, anti-dowry, AIDS Virodhi, that is anti-AIDS, government programs, and fetched an honorarium. I traveled to villages for this. I performed not only for men, but also for women, which you just witnessed. So this is, as I said, was a very revolutionary step, and Surekha Punekar, this dancer, this artist I'm talking about, has been, making these innovative moves. I performed not only for men, but also women, because women never attended these shows, and I wanted them to do so. So when she started performing for women, these were special shows only for women. She and the other artists used to stand at the doors of the theater welcoming women, giving them whistles so that they could whistle in the audience. And whenever they found that whenever they liked any performance, and they also presented them with jasmine flowers, the gajra that is typically the women would wear. So all of that, this is how she was trying to really change this space. Thus, Surekha Tai was equally involved in social activism. She also seemed very sensitive to gender discrimination because, as we see, men watched the women artists dance on the Tamasha stage. However, they would not allow their own respectable women to watch these shows. Thus, she questioned the double standards of some men who constructed hierarchies. Hierarchies of caste, class, and sexuality. Surekha Tai decided to perform special Tamasha shows only for women. During such events, she herself stood at the doors of the public halls to welcome women. During these ladies' night outs, women enjoyed immensely and transgressed gendered boundaries, for example, by whistling like men, or even dancing, as you just saw in this small clip that I showed you, right? So women were also dancing and performing with the artists. So they're trying to engage in these conversations. Both Mangalatai and Surekhatai were introduced to the stage by their parents. So you see that these families have been performing in a very traditional fashion. Their grandparents have been in the tamasha. Their parents have been, performing this art form, and they are also trying to do the same. However, they have been caught in these multiple, as I said, intersecting matrices of caste, class, gender, and sexuality hierarchies. Moreover, the fact that they were married and donned a thick gold Mangal Sutra had an immense significance to them. So the other thing that I noticed was that these women also, Sometimes they had a very successful marital relationships. At other times they did not. These were open relationships, as I mentioned earlier. However, they did put on Mangal Sutra, as you know, which is a sign of being married, right? And they had thick and very long Mangal Sutras showing as to how much they respected being married to these monogamous marriages. Their first lessons of education were the training they received from their parents. They danced and sang on the stage. The Tamasha stage was their school itself, on which their parents, like the school teachers, lashed beatings to discipline them and teach them to sing and dance. Their perpetual life on wheels made them travel from village to village to perform their art and, most importantly, earn their livelihood. Perhaps lack of education did not affect them much. However, they often spoke longingly about the school which did not include them. They were already earning very well in their present times. Tamasha was their business. It successfully fed numerous families dependent on it. These women had an instrumental value they looked at their families with an instrumental value. Though kicked by one and all, they handled affairs efficiently. Surekha Punekar, who earned her living from Tamasha dancing, did not want her children to be associated with the world of dance. Uneducated but lucratively employed, this accomplished dancer had sent her children away to a boarding school at Patsgani near Pune. Due to the nature of her work, she felt that she could not otherwise give them a stable education. She wanted to educate her children and keep them away from the world of tamasha, of dance and song and her life. However, ironically, her sons and her family have snapped contacts with her. Diametrically opposite to Surekha's dilemma regarding children was another dancer, Mangala Bansore, who kept her children with her throughout her life. She wanted her children to follow their ancestral calling of tamasha. She and others in her family said that they were following their khandani, literally as you see, traditional and an ancestral occupation. Tamasha was an art gifted to them by their khandan and their ancestors, and they were following this traditional art form like other classical arts of singing, dancing, and so on. In contrast, however, to some Dalit elites who looked down upon tamasha as a lower form of art, especially because it stigmatized Dalit women and aspired to train their children in classical dance forms of Kathak or Bharatnatyam. Mangalatai has indeed celebrated her status as a tamashagir as well as the art of tamasha. Of course, we see that she faced a double bind because she also lived the degraded life of a tamasha dancer. Yet she and her son considered themselves to be a part of a distinguished lineage in this respect. Mangala complained that she could not educate her children due to various reasons. She was the primary earning member of the family and was forced to be on the move, dancing in villages all the time. Life was never stable for her and her children so as to enable them to attend school. Her son, Nitin Bansore, talked about their business, and I quote, "I want to move forward. I have 6 movies to my credit today. We also have CDs of our Tamasha Lavnis. We earn around 1 to 2 lakhs during the Yatra or a Jatra season, that is the village fair. Last year, the earning was a little low due to the famine, but we normally do not get less than rupees 30,000. At times, we have to spend on our own. During the rains, there is a loss. Now again, see that during the elections, there is less public coming in today. So we have to bear all these losses." End quote. So this khandani is now their business. In this, Mangala Tai and her sons were consolidating her ancestral, economic, and cultural capital, and in the process, providing a way of life for future generations of her family to live upon. Nitin was nonetheless in a dilemma about his children's education, as he was not able to pay much attention to it. He explained, and I quote, "I am doing very well in movies and so on. My son accompanies me on all my shows. When he will turn 2 or 3, I will admit him in a hostel. I am in tamasha, but I do not want my children to follow me there." Thus, Many Dalit tamasgirs were concerned and were confounded by their circumstantial quagmires that hindered them and their education. While these were the predicaments of Nitin, some performers had succeeded in organizing and taking care of their children's education and their way of life in a more satisfactory way. Through their personal initiative, they had launched upon some small businesses and opened opportunities for themselves. However, this was also possible because of the sexual labor of Dalit women, which played a key role in this industry. Traditionally, these were despised and lowly occupations, and these women have had to constantly struggle to preserve their honor within and without the Dalit community and enhance their social status. After the creation of the state of Maharashtra in 1961, the government set up a cultural department basically to protect folk art, as the government says, and special efforts were made. This is, as the government declares, the state declares, were made to preserve lokakala, that is folk art, and document the repertoire of popular cultural forms. However, these popular forms, which are at the heart of Marathi regional identity, continued to be derided, and the artists and their performance has also continued to be despised by the majority population. The Tamasha and Lavani performances, as we saw, draws men from all castes and classes. Women, especially at the Lavani Mahotsav, which we just saw, were also continuing to enjoy the entertainment provided by women and also joining the artists on the stage. However, we see that these artists are despised as, almost as public prostitutes, and they are deprived of a healthy lifestyle. As a result, Dalit women continue to battle the matrix of overlapping patriarchies, caste, class, education or its lack, gender, moral norms, and labor to earn their livelihood, to record their descent, and have their being.